Hello, everyone. Welcome to the next episode of The Naked Product. My name is Saurabh, as you all know. We started this Naked Product because we wanted to evangelize products AI in the northern side of the country. Having said that, it's not only confined to folks in North India, but it's confined to entire subcontinent, right? And the idea is predominantly to basically speak on topics relevant to current ecosystem in terms of AI, in terms of products. So we are calling in folks from all walks of life. We've called in folks came from typical core AI engineering background. We spoke to folks who are basically running AI companies. We spoke to folks who were AI product management leaders, right? So we spoke to a bunch of folks. And one of the things that has been really boggling me for the last few months, if I may be a little frank, is that how do you crack speech? So before we get into that, I think I would like to welcome my friend, somebody I've been very lucky to know for the last couple of years, and I rely a lot on her counsel, on her advice. And she's a prolific marketeer. She runs her own digital marketing agency. She's been doing marketing for the last decade and more than that, I guess. And she's probably cracking this riddle as I'm talking to you. But without much ado, let me pass it over to Melanie to say a few words about herself. And thank you so much, Melanie, for coming down to our podcast.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I think it's a tremendous opportunity to be discussing AI at this moment in time because there's so much happening every week. But before we get started, I'll just give everyone a bit of an overview as to who I am, what I've been doing. So I'm a marketer. I've been a marketer for about 17 years. And I started my career with, hardcore advertising. So I started with Ogilvy as a copywriting intern. And over the years, I've done different kinds of things from a marketing perspective. I've produced ad films, worked with magazines, done PR, worked in retail. I've headed marketing for global brands like Gap, Nautica, The Children's Place, etc. Launched Gap in the country for that matter. And my last corporate stint was with Raymond's as head of marketing for Park Avenue. And at some point, of course, I decided to jump into the entrepreneurial journey. And so here I am, 5 years of running P Labs, which is a digital marketing consultancy. We work with brands to help them in different stages. And that's a little bit about me and sort of very excited to be here, by the way. So, yes, we should get started wherever you'd like to go now.
Incidentally, my one of my ventures was also called P Labs, and I took the name from uh, someone from a company called IPL. I used to work there, and they had a feature called they used to basically make people do MBA in products, and there was this practical feature called P Labs where guys were supposed to come and basically build products for companies.
Uh-huh.
So I took the name from there, and then when I saw your
Okay.
venture's name, I think it sort of resonated a lot because I was predominantly the guy responsible for running P Labs for IPL back in Bangalore. But having said that, I think I
Nice.
wanted to ask you how did you get into digital marketing? But they've already explained that very well. So let me get into the core question right away. So the core question over here is,
Sure.
what's been the biggest mindset shift for you as marketing evolved from a digital first era to an AI first era?
See, I think personally for me, the biggest mindset shift that has happened is being curious. It's not really a mindset shift, honestly, but AI forces you to be incredibly literally every week, right? So if as a marketer you're not curious enough to kind of toy around with them, play with them, and not be nervous about the technology, I think it is very easy to become dated in this industry. Like in general, digital moves very, very fast. AI has accelerated it in a way I cannot even begin to describe. So I think the biggest learning for me would be the pace at which we need to keep track of AI and its changes relative to marketing specifically.
So I think there has been a question that's been lingering for the last 3 years in different shapes and forms. The question over
Mm.
here is that if you compare the playbook of the digital first era, right, marketing playbook for consumer tech, for enterprise tech, you basically dealt with all kinds of clients, right? And you compare it to what really happened post the Gen AI explosion, right? how has that playbook kind of changed? Sort of related to the first question only, but in a different
Yeah,
way, because
yeah.
people used to know that.
I think it's an excellent question and one that I really, really love. So you asked me about mindset shift. For me, I think because I run a services business,
Right.
there's not a significant mindset shift, right? But if I were to look at it from the lens of a business owner, for example, if I were to launch a brand today, because of AI, marketing has changed dramatically in three specific ways. Okay, so if I look at discovery of a brand, it has become even more complex because with all of these LLM tools, discovery or SEO, for example, is impacted in a very huge way, right? Then when you look at acquisition, uh, wherein you're running ads for customers, for example, today everyone and anyone theoretically can create content. Theoretically being the operative word there, right? So the stakes in that sense have been lowered a lot more. And then when you look at it from a post acquisition standpoint, there is so much automation available, right? So there is really no excuse for a brand or business to have a poor onboarding experience of a customer. Okay. Now, as with all things tech, adoption always takes time, right? So we are in that phase where everything is running at a breakneck speed. Businesses are trying really hard to kind of adapt to all of these changes in each segment of the user journey, whether it is early stage, late stage, whatever type of businesses. But the reality is that for the average customer, what they are by and large experiencing is really seeing a lot of creatives which are AI driven. They are seeing a lot of automation. So I don't know if you've heard of this from brand owners or yourself. Your ability to interact with a human being has reduced a lot more now. Everyone is using a lot of automation to kind of, minimize that human to human interface because it is expensive. So in that sense, the entire playbook has changed a lot. Brands need to be very clear about which channels they need to be on and therefore which ones they want to own because it's so fragmented now. It's so fragmented, right? Earlier, people used to think, okay, you do Meta ads, Google ads, etc. Now you need to kind of really diversify your pool or say that, you know what, I'm going to double down my spends and just focus on this one particular channel or two channels or three channels or whatever is right for you, right? So I think in that sense, the playbook has evolved a lot. And I think it is going to evolve a lot more.
So again, a question that's probably in continuance to the earlier answer you spoke about. I think in ever since the advent of generative AI in particular, right?
Mm-hmm,
What
mm-hmm.
are the specific skills in marketing? Let's talk about copywriting or SEO or customer research or campaign execution or any other skill per se. What are the skills that have been disrupted a lot because of this Gen AI?
I think virtually every skill in marketing has been disrupted. That's the reality of it. Okay.
Right.
I could literally spend an hour talking about them all. But if I were to just look at it from a brief overview standpoint, um, websites, can be created in like 3 minutes. So can apps.
Sure.
Straight away disruption. Anyone and everyone can aim to write fairly well, but where the distinction lies between good writing and very mediocre writing is in the author's own kind of take and polish, right? And the third big impact that we are seeing, of course, in the creative aspect of it, right? Where you can create images, you can create videos, and all of that using AI, which is great. Those are the three biggest shifts, I would say. From an SEO perspective, again, there are a lot of shifts because people are able to do things a lot faster. I don't think I would call it necessarily as part of generative AI. It's more automation driven. But these are the four broad areas where I see the biggest shifts or disruptions which have happened. And people are testing things out, some good results, some mixed results, some excellent results. But as always, I think the people who would excel at it are people who are able to truly command that specific skill set and know how to break the rules, or at least know the rules before they start breaking them.
Right. And I think one question that comes to my mind when you speak about all of that is that in any way has generative AI sort of leveled the field for small startups, or has it widened the gap for companies with bigger resources? Because that's a question that's been going on for a very long time.
Yeah, yeah,
Larger companies versus startups, right? The startups probably are a little scanty on resources.
yeah. I think that's an excellent question, and it's a question that I keep observing, right? Because we work with a lot of small, I would say, small and medium businesses.
Right.
A lot of early stage businesses would like to use these resources, but the reality is, even the simplest AI tools today cost you, say, $30 to $40 a month.
Sure.
Okay. Now, that's just tool usage and all of that. The most critical aspect over there is know-how. So now, for example, if you want to produce a certain kind of video, you still need to know what kind of prompts need to work to get the right kind of output. Now, typically what ends up happening, and it is already happening, we're seeing this a lot in the
Sure.
e-commerce industry for apparel, right? Everyone's product looks the same. Everyone's models look the same, right? So I think in that sense, your ability to go to market is a lot simpler. But I think the ones that may succeed better are people who have a clear vision of why they are doing what they are doing. So in that sense, I think the fundamentals have not changed. Having a clear identity, having a clear roadmap as to who you are, why you are, and what you are doing, and knowing that and being able to communicate that to the customer, I think still stays. But yes, today it is much easier to launch a brand using these tools, minimize your cost centers, and you can probably do it in one-fifth the budget that you could earlier. But then it also means that you need to know what to do with them.
Right. Right.
So that's the trade-off. Earlier, if you had to hire 5 professionals, today you need to be able to do it yourself. Or you still go ahead and hire those 5 professionals who then use those AI tools to kind of give you a much more polished output. So those are the two routes, right? Now, if I were to look at much larger corporates, for example, much larger corporates like let's say Coca-Cola, for example, they did a campaign last year using AI, right? And they just wanted to revive one of their oldest campaigns of happiness for the holidays or something to that effect. Now, corporates are able to test out these what we call fringe trends much earlier.
Right.
They know how quickly something will bomb or not bomb at scale if they want.
Right.
Starting with small tests and then applying it at a much larger level. I think smaller brands are able to test much more quickly on a much smaller scale, so they will get a lot of benefits as the technology evolves, right? As long as they know what to do with it.
Right. So one of the things that Seth Godin and a lot of marketers keep talking about is that there is no litmus test in marketing, right? I mean, you really don't know what's going to happen. It's a very unpredictable scenario. You can
Yeah.
probably try to figure out what's happening, but I don't
Yeah.
think there is any marketer who can predict the outcome of the marketing.
I think a lot of people who run ads on Meta would kind of disagree because they all guarantee that they know what's happening. So yeah.
Well, no offense.
So we'll take that
But,
with a pinch of salt. But yeah.
but essentially, I would now like to dive into a question that's been bothering a lot of marketers, or I'd say a lot of aspiring marketers. Is that coming from a seasoned marketer like you, is that what are the AI tools that are being used by folks like you and the likes of you and folks in the marketing industry, specific to use cases? You know, in the last 3 years, you would have switched and basically you've probably been using a lot of tools. What are those tools exactly? And in your line of business, how do you use those?
Sure. So I'll again go back to those 3 stages of the customer journey, right? So if I look at discovery per se, when we look at discovery from an SEO lens or social media lens, right? So we use a lot of tools from an SEO perspective for content creation with certain rules, GPTs. Like we have a lot of custom GPTs for our clients that is trained on their data, for example, right? So it helps our writers create content much faster, very nuanced content, and it covers a lot of fundamentals, for example, that we want to make sure doesn't get missed out. Now something that would typically take us, say, 7 days as a process now takes us 48 hours, right? So custom GPTs is one example. If I look at ads, again, from a creative standpoint, we use a lot of tools. There are, so many video generation tools, right? Runway, Freepik gives you various models. We've been experimenting a lot with VEO, which is Google's model for video creation. We use a lot of ChatGPT and Claude to generate images itself. and then of course deploy them in ads,
Right.
right? Again, AI tools get used a lot by us for copywriting itself, and we use it with very specific kind of inputs in terms of the kind of reference content we want or reference copy we want, what kind of mood we want. So again, a lot of training of those models is necessary. And then lastly, from a web design standpoint, we use tools like, say, Lovable, for example, many other industry tools, but typically Lovable is the easiest to go to, where my teams can just very quickly mock up stuff before a presentation and say, hey, this is what things may look like. So time to kind of production or time to kind of hit stuff is much reduced with all of these tools. So yeah, these are just some of the tools that we use on a day-to-day basis. And our stack, I think, barring a few things, have been evolving virtually every quarter, because every quarter there's like a new tool to test out,
Right.
experiment.
Right.
So I think in that sense, there are a few that have stayed, which are among the names that I've named. And then there might be others that keep getting added, removed based on how we see things playing out. So in that sense, a lot of experimentation has been going on.
Outstanding, outstanding. I probably made a note of all those tools basically. I kind of use a lot of tools day to
Yeah,
day.
you are an extensive experimentalist yourself. So
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. I'm an experiment in the making, I guess. That's what I call myself. But I think in reality, as a marketer, have you seen a 10x or a 5x jump in marketing in terms of reach, creativity, ROI? If I talk about all these metrics, have you seen 10-fold jump or a 20-fold jump as they keep talking about it in the mainstream media? That ever since AI came, it kind of broke marketing. And now probably there's a 10x jump in terms of reach and everything else.
I wish I could quantify it like that. And probably, there is some measurability to it.
Right.
The time saving is tremendous. No going away from that. Like I just explained, for example, from an SEO standpoint, if I needed to create an outline or a brief or something that my team needed to do, and it took them, say, 2 days, today takes them like 30 minutes, maybe, right? Uh, from a ad standpoint specifically, I think the interesting part is the role of MCPs, wherein you can create a lot of scripts, you can integrate it with the ad platform and set up a lot of rules. So in that sense, tracking, monitoring, again, automation has minimized the amount of human intervention needed on a daily basis. So in that sense, I would definitely say that there are a lot of savings of time, but I wouldn't necessarily go ahead and say it's 10x. It's not like if my team could do X amount of work, they are now doing 10x amount of work. That's just not viable, right? So yeah, I mean, has it improved productivity for brands or for us as an agency? Absolutely. Is it as much as 10x? Probably not. I would say maybe say 3x, which is still, I would say, a dramatic improvement in a lot of ways.
Right.
So time saved is time you can utilize doing other things.
So, so I think one of the drawbacks of these models is that there is a dearth of data. We all know it. Right? There's a dearth of data, and if I'm being a little specific, there's a dearth of diversity in data. Right? We don't
Yes,
have diverse
absolutely.
data.
Correct, correct.
Now, most of the LLMs, because there is a dearth of data, they're being trained on synthetic data generated by a different LLM. Right? So
Yep,
we you generate data from Claude, and now you use that data to train ChatGPT or vice
yep.
versa or any other model, right?
Hmm.
So in this way, the content generated for campaigns kind of look the same, right?
Yes,
So in
absolutely.
this world, how in keeping that in mind, how do you maintain brand authenticity and brand uniqueness when all the content in the campaigns kind of look the same?
So, it kind of takes me back to the conversation we were having earlier, small brands versus big brands and how
Right,
they, compete in this space.
right,
And it goes back to the same thing, right? In the 1990s, for example, or even in 2000s, you needed a creative director because that creative director came with a certain lens. Okay, that creative director was exposed to a lot of stuff. So he
right.
told you very clearly that, look, boss, if you're launching a brand in this space, this is what your visual cue set needs to look like. Okay. And from there, he kind of refined it for you because he spoke to you, sat over coffee, understood your motivation behind launching a brand, for example.
Right,
Right.
right,
Today, that doesn't exist if you're using an AI tool, which is where I said that you need to be able to either brief the tool with as much exposure and nuance. Now, if I am a founder, what you are essentially asking me to do is become a creative director, a video editor, a copywriter, and every other function all in one. That's realistically not possible. What we're essentially trying to do is collapse a 20-member team into a one-person team.
Right.
And that's just going to result in mediocrity all around, right? So if you are a brand, I think, like I said, knowing who you are, what you are, and what you stand for, non-negotiable. Okay. At least invest the money into visualizing or explaining that to someone so that it can be translated into tangible kind of communication cues. It could be your logo, it could be your product. Now, I'll give you a very simple example. Let's say you want to start a phone brand tomorrow, right? Um, and I'm sure you've gone through the entire process of unboxing an Apple phone, right? Very smooth, very deliberate, very intentional. Now, we all know, we've all read about Jobs and his thought process about why he wanted that product experience to be that way. Now, are you going to be able to create a product like that by prompting an LLM? No. So, if you are a brand or if you are an owner who wants to kind of create a differentiated product or an experience, you still need to do the work. You still need to hire someone who can work with you and kind of at least lay certain foundational pillars to then say, okay, now that I have my guardrails in place, I can probably work with some kind of tools to produce communication faster, for example, which is fine. But that foundation you cannot skip because that's where everyone starts looking same. And we're seeing that in e-commerce apparel, right? We're seeing a lot of brands use AI generated models to wear clothes, model them in different kind of contexts. Say someone's walking in Italy, for example, or walking in Paris. Now, the problem with that is the minute you look at it, it looks fake. It looks like a model. It looks like something that a machine produced.
Right.
Now, if you want to improve upon that, you need to know the cue or the prompt for the AI tool to say, okay, boss, shoot this in, say, hyperflash, for example, or so many lens.
Right.
And that nuance just does not exist with brand owners because it's not their job. It's not their job to be a creative director. So, I mean, that's where it is. You need to have a very clear vision and get someone to help you translate it, post which you can figure out how your mechanics work from a AI standpoint.
A little dystopian, if I may. So, much recently, there's a guy who came to me and he was running a startup. And what he does is something called GEO, which has become famous lately, right? I mean, the generative engine optimization for folks who don't know about GEO. It's the new thing about LLMs where you search for something, if you're prompting something and you get a result, probably you get some ads connected to the result. Well, very similar to how you search on Google, right? Now, SEO lately has been impacted because of paywalls, right? And then I think also a lot of the data there on the internet is being indexed by these models. So most of the data is there in this model. So number of clicks, the click rates have fallen drastically over the last 12 months, right? That's what the data talks about. Now, do you see in the next couple of years there will be a paradigm shift from SEO to GEO, or GEO will just complement SEO? Because the guy I spoke to like a week back, he said that I want SEOs to work with me where I can complement them. I can probably ensure that the LLMs generate results pertaining to their customers and clients that they're anyways doing in terms of the SEO. So do you see that paradigm shift happening, or is it like a complementary thing that will probably an efficiency layer on top of, let's say, an SEO?
So, in the entire SEO industry, because that's a space that I'm very closely affiliated with
Right.
personally as a professional. Of course, my business serves different services. In the SEO industry, there is a running joke about GEO because there is no GEO without SEO, right? What are the LLMs indexing? They are indexing websites, correct? So if you have done SEO taking care of the fundamentals, LLMs will quote you. If you haven't, there is no such thing as GEO, right? So as far as the paradigm shift is concerned, the jury is kind of still out there. Are we in a zero click era? Absolutely. Okay, which is where I was saying that discovery is fragmented. So discovery is fragmented. Why? Because today, let's say if you are a millennial, for example, you are still sort of accustomed to going onto Google and searching for stuff, right? You may still go to, say, an AI tool like ChatGPT or Claude or whatever and ask questions. I mean, I've stopped using search 9 out of 10 times for the last 2 years. It started with Meta's, in WhatsApp kind of tool. And then I kind of, over a period of time, just started using ChatGPT, Claude, blah, blah, blah. So I almost don't use search. This is a behavioral shift that is happening with the younger audience, which is your Gen Z, for example.
Right.
But the reality is also this, right? Gen Z has been searching on social media platforms. So what was on Google earlier is now happening on Reddit, Pinterest, and other platforms, say Instagram or TikTok. So that's one side of the equation, right? The other side of the equation, there are a lot of people who are very pro GEO, are not realizing is that what LLMs are doing, in fact, is generating more search volume. Now, what do we mean by that? Earlier, people would just ask questions. Okay, what is this? What is that? Now they are having full on conversations with the tool, right? They are asking 24-word sentences or paragraphs, so to speak, on what a particular subject is, right? That means that the volume of search that is happening has actually just increased. The difference is where it is happening, right? So we can call it a paradigm shift if we want. Do we expect people to stop searching on Google specifically? Probably yes. Okay. But what that means is the market is going to get fragmented further. Why do I say that? Today, Perplexity, ChatGPT are all looking at launching their own browsers, right? Now, they don't really have any incentive to launch their browser. So clearly, they have some kind of understanding of the consumer's behavior that is saying that, hey guys, we still need a browser. Because as I explain, when I teach digital marketing, I say there are two ways to access the internet, right? A web and app, right? Now these guys have the app, but if they still want a browser, there's obviously something in the web journey that they think needs to be addressed, which the app is currently not addressing. Now, it could be monetization for the product itself. It could be that, typically when you engage with an LLM tool, you're only going to see 3 or 4 kind of reference products, for example, from a shopping standpoint. So, from a paradigm shift, I think we are still a bit away. The one big shift that I will say, and I expect it, it's very contrarian, is that I actually expect people from a discovery standpoint to go analog, do a full tilt to analog because people want to interact with other people. They want tactile experiences. So I actually expect a huge shift or re-steering towards analog. Just the other day, I was reading a post on X, where someone said, I wish there was a device which you could turn on and you could hear stuff like immediate news for free. And people responded and said, that's the radio. That's what the radio was. So, it's like a full circle practically. So, is GEO meant to be complementary? Yeah, I would say it's a subset of SEO. It is not an independent discipline in and of itself.
But I think to the point you raised about distribution or maybe volumes per se is because there was no browser as such. But I think with Comet, that Perplexity started, I think that's going to change that because if you use that browser, then probably there's no point for you to basically go to Chrome and go to Google from there, right? So,
Correct. Which just means that we are diversifying the web browsing experience, right? Because even today, you've got Brave, you've got DuckDuckGo, you've got Bing, and there are users for all of these, right? Now, even today, Chrome has about 60% of the market share.
right.
That share might come down to say 40%. It just means that the market becomes fragmented. User behavior changes to different providers. User behavior doesn't change in and of itself.
Absolutely, absolutely. Now, one of the things I think a badly abused word that I've heard for the last 1 year, and I'm extremely frustrated every time I hear that word from different people, is the word agent.
Oh, yes.
Everyone's talking about agents, right?
Yes.
Now, but in reality, in retrospect, I'm using the agent that ChatGPT has recently come up with on their interface, right? And I think it's given some functionality to check mails or do your Notion and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Limited in terms of capabilities, but Hansen, in any way, has this agent ecosystem that that ushered in like probably months back, has it changed the marketing workflows by any chance?
I would say that again, there's an agent is essentially an automation tool, right? So can automation change marketing? Of course it can. Can it kind of start creating reports for you? Of course it can. Can it read through emails, send a follow-up? Of course it can. It's not changing anything principally that didn't exist from an automation standpoint. What you can automate is getting automated, right? Um, if I could, for example, draft a pitch, say in 3 days, today with agents, I can probably do it in, say, 3 hours, right? An agent can do all my research. I can give it pre-qualifying sort of parameters, all of that, right? So, yes, agents have enabled automation in a huge extent. And as a result, of course, impacted marketing. But I'm always a fan of asking, is it really fixing a problem we had to begin with, right? And I think when it comes to marketing, there is a certain amount of productive efficiency that we need, which agents bring without a doubt. But I think we'll find very quickly that we'll reach that point of diminishing returns beyond which there's really no point. So, yes, agents have helped us as a marketing agency, as a function, become more efficient without a doubt.
But they still need human supervision, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. Look, I don't think we are at that stage where any AI tool, and this is a conversation I have with industry colleagues every day, every week, in fact, where we are testing out, everyone in the industry is testing out different tools. And the one thing that I keep hearing from industry colleagues is that at best, an AI tool of any sort in any sphere is capable of optimizing to up to 40% of your workflow. That's it. Nothing more, nothing less. Whether it is with regards to copywriting, whether it's with regards to automating stuff, whether it is regards to creating ads, for example. In ads specifically, of course, there is a lot of cost benefit that people keep talking about. But again, I think unless you really know what you are doing, it would be difficult to say that, hey, I've come up with this amazing, creative that I could do from scratch without knowing anything about advertising. That's just not going to happen, right? So, yeah, I mean, agents are great, efficient, effective, as long as you know where it is likely to make mistakes and are obviously capable of making sure that you can supervise them. Can you hand over an agent or an entire project to someone who's not experienced and say let it run? Probably not, right? So I think in that sense it is a great enabler for a lot of people, for a lot of professionals. It does not replace people.
So recently, the grapevine has been rife with the buzz that, I think we are moving from a very utopian realm to a very dystopian realm. A lot of stuff is manifesting, which we probably heard as part of scientific folklore for the last 2 decades or something. Keeping that in mind, do you see there will be a virtual CMO position which will be responsible for creating strategies, executing strategies, and probably taking care of reporting and Excel? You see that shift happening, or is it merely science fiction as of now?
Honestly, there probably is the opportunity. Will it happen to a point of being super efficient and effective? Probably not. See, I think we need to understand what a CMO is meant to do, right? A CMO is meant to define strategy. A strategy doesn't live on its own in vacuum. It reacts to what's happening in pop culture. I'll give you a simple example. Let's take, the Stanley Cups as a brand, right? Now, Stanley Cup until 2025 or 2024, they were just languishing. Like there was nothing happening with them. They were the most unsexy product ever, right? There is no CMO, let alone an AI one, who could have foreseen this sudden surge, right? So is there a possibility where AI tools can help you preempt or kind of foresee these trends? Yes. But all of that already exists. There are enough and more tools that allow you social listening, that allow you to kind of look at the conversations which are happening around your brand, which you can mine, create insights, like that's been happening for the last 10 years, right? But at the end of the day, no AI tool can make that judgment call of whether can I use a Coldplay incident for my creative. It's so contextual. Human emotion is so nuanced,
Yeah.
right? There are enough brands that kind of took that moment and ran with it. Many others that got called out and were really critiqued for it, right? As a human being, I don't think we are in the age or place where AI can make that call for you without any failure. So that's just a very tiny sort of example, right? And that's where I think that a CMO's position probably carries a bit more weight. And I don't think we're in that place where an AI tool can kind of say, hey, I'll do your strategy and I'll do your reporting. Of course, it can do your reporting. That's again automation, right? What we're effectively asking about is not generative, but artificial intelligence. I don't think we are there yet. We might maybe in 5 years, I don't know. But at the moment, I still feel that there is value for human emotion and nuance. And if we ever get to that place, God forbid, then maybe.
So giving that in mind, I think a lot of a question that comes to everyone's mind, folks who are predominantly a part of the marketing community, so early stage marketeers, mid stage marketeers, and marketing leaders, they're all sort of asking this one question, that what are the skills that I need to learn to stay relevant in this business, right? Because a lot's changed in the last 3 years, you all know, right? And and I think the question now is of relevance. Are you relevant or not? Right? So are you from the Jurassic era, or are you from the Gen AI era? This is the question that I think everyone's asking. So you being a marketeer, what are the skills you think would apply to make these three categories of people relevant today, today's world?
Um, More than a skill, I would say it's a quality, which, like I said at the very beginning, it's the ability to be curious and experimentative. So, as a organization, one thing that we say is anyone can learn any skill, but nobody can teach you attitude. Now, if you do not have a sense of curiosity to kind of be comfortable with playing with tech, you're going to have trouble. Okay. And the reason I say that is because we have people who come in for interviews who don't even know how to send out a meeting invite. Okay. Now, these are the people who need to be able to figure out how to use tools, how to learn the nuances of them. I mean, we come across people on a regular basis who, on a good day, cannot use the most basic of tools that have been around for the longest time, right? So, I say more than learning any specific tool or product, your ability to kind of toy around with things, experiment, and be curious is probably the only thing that will give you any kind of moat as a professional today, because the tools are going to change. Technology is going to change. I had said this 2 years ago that in about 5 years' time, writing code will become redundant. Everyone will be able to write code, and that's kind of happening. Vibe coding is exactly that. But where the nuance lies is knowing what database to choose, knowing what rules to write for those databases, knowing how to structure those databases. Now, for most people, when they come, especially within marketing, they tend to get very siloed. Achha, I'm going to do only SEO, Achha, I'm going to do only ads. And they tend to then kind of limit their understanding of how marketing works as a function. I think if we learn about human behavior, that's the one thing that can ensure that you still stay relevant, because human behavior keeps evolving, right? And that in and of itself is the foundation of marketing. What worked for humans, say in the 60s and 70s, which is radio and TV, for example,
Right.
does not work anymore. So being able to kind of keep up with human behavior and human trends is possibly the biggest skill that you need to have, apart from, of course, being curious.
I think that also takes me to the conversation I had with Harsh last week in our fourth podcast, and he said that in this world where we are living in an AI centric world, I think what will also matter is that how fast can you unlearn, right, as opposed to learning, because things are going to change like drastically. So how fast can you get rid of those things that you learn and you learn new things is actually going to matter a lot, right?
I think, yes, sorry, I'm interrupting you probably.
Sure.
I think there is some merit to it, and there is also some amount of hyperbole there. Okay, and I'll explain to you why. Now, today, let's take the example of creating a website for easy reference. There was a time when you needed to go to a developer and say, "Okay, boss, I want a website. This is my industry. These are the kind of websites I like, blah, blah, blah. Today, you and
Right.
I can sit and create a website in 3 minutes. Right. Now, have the fundamentals of that process changed? No. Right? Today, the tool is capable of repairing its own code, but knowing good code from bad code, still necessary. Right? Uh, Knowing certain fundamentals still is necessary, because without that, you cannot go beyond, say, 90% of what people are doing today, right? And as I'm a fan of saying that, to be able to break the rules, you need to know the rules.
Right.
So to know the rules, you need to know the fundamentals, and there's no going away from that. So yes, tools will change. You need to unlearn, absolutely. But your foundations that underpin all of these will still remain, whether it is website design, whether it is marketing as a whole. You cannot reinvent the funnel. You cannot reinvent discovery. Maybe if earlier there were 10 points, today there might be 3 points, but those 3 points will happen, say, 80 times before a conversion happens, instead of the 9 linear kind of journeys. If I were to give you a simple example, let's say if earlier you wanted to buy a shampoo, you probably saw an ad on TV, you then saw an ad in the paper, you then went to the supermarket. A lot of things converged at the right time, at the right moment for you to make that decision. Okay, I want shampoo A,
Right.
right? Today, you may very well purchase a shampoo because you saw an ad and then some friend of yours said, कि अरे यार ये shampoo बहुत अच्छा है, right? You would probably have to see that ad 6 times before you make that purchase. So the journey in that sense is not linear, but the number of times I need to expose you has more or less kind of stayed the same. You know, the bell curve of early adopters, your mass adopters, laggards still stays, because, like with all things human, we are all, sum of averages in some senses. So,
So I think a lot of tech pundits lately have been predicting these doomsday scenarios about AI replacing jobs and all. And we've been reading it about these articles in almost every tech magazine that comes up, right? And everyone's kind of worried. Economists are predicting that doomsday scenarios and all that. But having said all of that, do you see that marketing jobs in terms of AI replacing them? Do you think AI will be a job creator, a job shaper, or a job destroyer in terms of the marketing job that will sort of disappear or maybe become a little less than what they were earlier?
so, you know, it's already happened even without AI, right? Today, I mean, I've read so many job ads that advertise that they want someone who knows SEO, who knows how to run Facebook ads, someone who knows creative, someone who knows tracking and analytics. In reality, they are 4 different jobs, right? So the expectation that businesses have that someone should know all of these has been there for the last several years already, right? AI, if anything, has been a great enabler for a person to kind of absorb those skills very, very quickly, right? There are a lot of jobs that are going to be sort of removed, replaced, or redundant, depending on the value they are adding to the business. So, as a simple example, if you are someone who's just doing MIS reports, right, Excel reports, obviously you are going to get churned out fairly quickly because AI can produce all of those reports, correct? But if you are a data analyst who knows how to read those reports and pull out the right kind of insights, you're not going anywhere,
Right.
right? So it's not so much about AI being a job destroyer. There have been tools for the longest time. It's about how you are able to deploy those tools in your own sort of resume or your own skill sets to become a person or a professional that's adding value to the organization. Um, can one person do the 4 jobs that I described? Probably yes. Will they be excellent at it? Probably no. So for each organization, I think, depending on their scale and stage, they would need to make conscious choices about the kind of marketing teams they want and what they think makes sense from a strategy standpoint. So, as a simple example, let's say you're running a SaaS brand, right? You have a product.
Right. Right.
You would always want a good copywriter on the team because good copy is at the foundation of good content and interaction with customers, right?
Absolutely.
you would probably not invest in a data analyst because you probably have someone who can ingest all of that data and pull it out to you in visuals that work for everyone,
Right.
right? You will have an ads person, for example, but you would probably not have a separate tracking analyst or a tracking specialist, sorry, because that ads guy will say, look, we need to put this code in place. It'll give you the instructions. You'll have an, agent who can probably explain the whole thing to you, right? So, in that sense, some jobs will collapse without a doubt, but they are likely going to be jobs that are principally low value in nature. If you're able to augment or supplement your own skill sets with the use of AI, it will definitely be an enabler for you. But yes, the one thing that I can say with confidence is the days of being a specialist are gone. You
Right.
know, you need to know something about everything. You can probably choose to specialize in one specific thing, but you cannot afford to not know the other aspects of it. You need to know a little bit because never before in the time of human history have we had information that is so accessible.
Right.
There is no excuse for you to be ignorant. So if you choose to remain that way, that is you making that decision to kind of, get yourself laid off.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Now, having said all of that, I think the natural progression is towards the future of marketing, right? And if I talk about that, then how do you think with AI woven into almost all the campaigns in today's world, right? How do you see the marketing landscape in the next 3 to 5 years?
I think marketing is going to become a very expensive endeavor because we are looking at channel fragmentation, right? If I look at Comet as an example, Comet is, Perplexity is funded to some extent. At the end of the day, they are a business. They need to generate revenue. They're going to have ads eventually, right? So the ecosystem just becomes diverse and fragmented. We are moving to a place and time where people are saying, enough screen time. I want to be outside. I want to interact with real human beings. Today, there is a premium on interacting with a real human being on chats, on customer service, right? So I think marketing is going to become very expensive, although the table stakes to kind of get in have kind of reduced. Like you can launch a website, you can launch a product, you can do many things very quickly. But if you want to be there for a longer period of time, it's going to be an expensive game because the one thing that is happening, in part because of Shopify, is that people are launching businesses and brands very, very quickly than they ever could, say, 5 years before. And COVID just kind of, really helped push through that, I would say, sense of haze or confusion business owners had. Should I do it? Should I not do it? Today, it's very easy to launch a business on Shopify. Now, the downside of that is also that year on year, for the last 3 years, advertising has become very expensive. Your CPMs have been rising because there are so many players in the market, and that's just going to get worse because if the minute a marketplace becomes so fragmented, you need to be either present in all of them or invest deeply into few of them. That means as a brand, I need to either be very clever about how people discover me, or I need to have deep pockets if I'm an early stage brand, right? And if I'm a late stage, big size brand, then I need to have investments in every single channel, much like the olden days. You would invest in TV, you do outdoor, you do radio, you do print. Today, the channel, or rather the medium, is broadly digital, but the platforms have kind of evolved and become very fragmented. So I think it's going to be a very competitive time. The rewards will be there for people who are original as always. And of course, there will be a sea of people who are doing copycat brands, which is fine. But the brands that will survive are the ones that have a clear perspective on why they are in the business in the first place.
So are we sort of in the context of agents again, right? Are we sort of heading towards a future where a brand is being marketed by a marketing agent, right? Which is again seen by a personal agent of a consumer, right? And the personal agent decides whether this so-called advertisement for a particular product under a particular brand makes sense for me and makes a call, right? I mean, it takes it maybe goes and asks, or maybe it understands the way this person shops, right? I mean, the behavioral aspect of this person, and then makes a call. So if that be the scenario, which is where we are heading, right? I mean, it's a little dystopian to say it at this point in time, but that's where we're heading. In that context, what does marketing? How do you define marketing? If something like that happens.
So, some of this is already happening, right? Like Shopify is already integrated with AI agents where you can instruct the agent to kind of make the purchase on your behalf. So it goes back to the same point of discovery, right? Now, if an AI agent is helping you get discovered and an AI agent is making you buy the tool, I think the most logical question to ask is, if you are the consumer, you are the human consumer, would you rely on an AI agent to make that decision for you? How well does that AI agent need to know you to be able to get that right? And I'll give you a very simple example. Okay. If you are married, right, how well do you know your spouse enough if you've been married for 10 or 15 years to make sure that you get the gift right? You probably don't. I mean, all of us make these mistakes, right? But here we are hoping and praying or assuming that an AI agent will somehow get it right. I think that's really ambitious from a tool standpoint, but you never know. I mean, we may get there. And in that sort of scenario, I think top of mind recall is the most important part, which is where I said discovery, right? If an agent is talking to an agent, there is no screen. Your screens are around you, AR, right? That's the agent stage that we're talking about. And in that kind of space, there are always about three or four, five winners in every segment or category. And which is why I said marketing is going to get expensive, because if you want to command those first five spots in the consumer's mind, can you imagine the amount of investment you need to make to kind of make sure that it's a preferred choice? It's a preferred choice. Flipping the consumer or getting a consumer to switch might probably be even more expensive in the future. So the investment will have to go in earning that mind space if we do get to an agent to agent sort of environment for every single part of our life as far as buying decisions are concerned.
I must apologize for asking some very hard-hitting, heavy-duty questions all this while. But I think now as we move towards the end of the session, I think let's probably ask you some really fun questions, right? I mean, something that you really enjoy asking. So, and this is something that I would love to know from every marketer there on the planet. But again, all marketers are liars, as per Seth Godin, not liars. But what is that one myth in marketing that you'd like to bust? You've heard it for a while, and now you would like to bust that myth.
That you start running ads and you will have a successful business in 3 months. I'm so tired of it. Like, if only.
All right. So, any tools, books, or resources you would recommend marketeers to access, to read, to get a little deeper into this?
Um, I don't have specific resources because I personally am a lot like a grasshopper. I tend to consume widely, you know. But I would say whatever channel you use to kind of learn more about AI tools, persist, um, experiment. I think dedicate at least 3 hours a week to discovering new tools that are relevant to your field, and make sure you keep updated, because I don't think I've seen anything evolve at this pace as AI has. Even in 2025, every week is like new drop, new drop, new drop, new drop. So I would say, um, whether it is Instagram, whether it is YouTube, whether it is LinkedIn, wherever it is that you feel you will get the most amount of information about what is happening in the industry, stay tapped into it and experiment with all the tools that you can find, more to understand what those tools are capable of and what they can do for you.
All right. So, for folks who don't know Melanie, I think she's probably the busiest person I've met in my life. It's easy to get an appointment with the PM of the country. It's probably difficult to get an appointment with Melanie. So I had to do a lot of cajoling, a lot of requests to probably get her appear on this show. But again, very thankful for that. But before you go, Melanie, I'm not going to let you go that easily. I'm going to ask you like the question that's been disturbing me for the last couple of weeks, right? And that question would be that um, ever since the Gen AI explosion happened, right? A lot of these products have come. You have products like Cursor, you have products like Lovable. You have used Lovable to build websites and products and landing pages, right? I've done the same. And these are products that came and I don't know what they did, but they swept away a large part of the market towards them, and they kind of made crazy, crazy ARRs, right, for the time. Uh, and I feel that the most difficult part in running a startup today is the distribution part, right? I mean, you don't get it right 95, 98%, right? And I've got
Yep.
faced it by running
Yep.
Career to More, one of the services I launched. And so in today's world, right, if you were to launch a product, building time has been reduced exponentially, right? So today
Collapsed.
we
Yeah.
build in probably an hour or two or whatever. Your product is ready, and now you want to basically take it to the market, customer discovery part, and right. How do you think one can effectively crack distribution? If I am a startup building a 0 to 1 product and I have validated it with my customer, right? And the customers say it's a problem, they're willing to pay money also for that, right? Where do I find them? How do I crack distribution? How do I ensure that my product gets some kind of a product market fit? Let's say an early stage product market fit, so that which can end up in revenue if I were a company like that. Uh,
So,
what do you recommend?
let's take the example of SaaS product, right? Because I think SaaS products probably have the highest failure rate in some senses
Yeah,
and biggest hurdle to revenue, so to speak. I think if you have arrived at a product that is solving a problem to begin with, you already somewhat know where those people exist who have the problem, right? Now, if I were to take a simple example, let's say you've built a product that helps people prepare for interviews, for example,
right.
right? The most logical thing to do would be to reach out to campuses and say, hey, your kids need to get placed. They are struggling. This is my tool, right? I think where a lot of startups tend to make mistakes that we've seen at least is in kind of trying to do everything at once, right? I think the easier thing to do is test out small areas where you think your customer actually resides. And I think at the cost of sounding very cliche, your product needs to solve a problem. That's, baseline, right?
Right.
But apart from solving a problem, you need to know who your customer is. And what I mean by that is a lot of times people launch a product without quite even recognizing whether the problem in and of itself is significant enough to solve, right?
True.
And so, and it sounds very cliche, it sounds very logical, right? But there are enough and more tech products that are out there that don't really solve a product or solve it half, right? So I think knowing where your customers sit is a very, very crucial part. And that's where, communities like if you're on Discord, for example, because Discord is really for very tech sort of oriented people in some senses, get on that Discord channel, use different guerrilla marketing techniques, for example, to seed the product, get people to talk about it. At the end of the day, what I see working iteratively, and I'll give you an example, is when we see the product in environments where the consumer does not feel like they are being advertised to. Okay, I'll give you an example. There is a brand called Jetpack. Okay, now Jetpack is essentially a holiday. In the holiday segment, they do group deals, etc. Uh, they all through summer they've been seeding their brand, and in the most inane way, they've been seeding it via comments on Instagram. They've been seeding videos. The videos are interesting to watch, but in the audio in the background, you can hear their jingle playing.
Right.
You know, so it's these kind of clever sort of places or ways that you kind of get in front of the consumer. Now, could they have gone and advertised on podcasts? Obviously, they could have. Could they have bought Spotify spots? Obviously, they could have. But they've just been clever. And I think that ingeniousness or that kind of cleverness when it comes to marketing is what distinguishes mediocre brands from the really, really clever ones. So I think to summarize, I would say go where your customer is. And it sounds very cliche, but believe me, it's not as easily done.
As cliche as it might sound, I want to ask, what is your final piece of advice to all the marketeers who are listening to you in today's AI-centric world, which is sort of creating fear and paranoia at the same time?
I would say marketers as a community are probably the most vulnerable to FOMO. Whether you are a client, whether you are an agency owner, or you work in an agency, I think everyone has a very serious FOMO. And I think as someone who's seen a lot of trends come and go, I think it's great to test, try, be aware, use tools whilst realizing that things change and they always change. That is the law, right? But the law also says the more things change, the more they stay the same. So I think my one piece of advice would be to not kind of feel anxious, as hard as it may be, but to kind of try and keep up the best that you can with the technologies that are coming through, and try and make sure that your skills are then kind of updated to match those technologies to some extent. You have to make your peace with the fact that you will not be excellent at everything, but you need to know what you want to be good at. And that is a very conscious decision. You cannot be good at creative and data and communication and website development and ads and this. You probably may choose two things. It goes back to the same thing. You can choose two things, be really good at it, but you still need to know a little bit of this and a little bit of that.
On the funny side, a broke philosopher once remarked that it's always good to be suffering from JOMO as opposed to FOMO. So if you were to attain salvation or at least attain a little bit of happiness or bliss in your life.
Yeah.
So thanks Melanie for actually agreeing to appear in our show for like at such short notice. And I think it was mind blowing to hear stuff from marketeer. I have always admired your work. I have always taken counsel
Thank
from
you.
you, but I think it's also going to be beneficial to a lot of folks, to a lot of aspirants who want to become potential marketers like you and want to have a career in marketing. But thank you so much for agreeing to come to our show, and it was lovely having you. I mean, we chat a lot from time to time, but I think it was lovely having you as part of my podcast.
Thank you.
Love to
Thank you. I had fun.
bring
Thank you for
you
having me.
more and more forthcoming episodes to unravel this mystery called marketing. Thank you, Melanie. Bye.